Okay. Today is June 2nd, 2021. My name is Jenna Masahara, and I'll be interviewing Tom Sundher for the Coquitlam Heritage Oral History Project. And yes, a reminder, this interview is being recorded and will be made available to the public. Great, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So first, do you mind telling me what year you were born and where?
I was born in March 31st, 1941,
And where were you born?
in Port Alberni, BC, which is on Vancouver Island, on the west coast of Vancouver Island.
And can you describe what your childhood home was like?
It was really good. I mean, like, I enjoyed it. My mother and father and my grandfather lived with us, and my dad worked in the sawmill. And my grandfather, he was retired by the time he was staying with us. And it was really nice. I mean, like, we had a very good childhood, good neighborhood. I just enjoyed the thing. And then until my mother passed away when I was 8 years old, and I was in grade two, and my sister was in grade one. And then, then that changed things. I mean, it didn't, it changed it in that we had to adjust our life differently than what it was when my mom was alive. And that was, she had a health issue, and she passed away very early in her life, which is sad for us. And then my dad had to raise us himself, and he hired a housekeeper that looked after us for a while till we could learn how to look after ourselves. And for I think 4 or 5 years she stayed with us. She was an elderly lady, Catholic lady, which was a widow, and she lived and stayed with us for about 5 years, so till I was about 13, 12 or 13 years old, and then we could sort of look after ourselves with my dad after that. And that's when my household chores started. We all had to chip in there. Before that, I didn't have to do anything.
And so what chores did you have to do then?
Well, household chores, cleaning, making sure the cooking is done. My dad worked in the mill, so he would come home for lunch. We'd make sure that everything was ready for him. So we had to be grown up very fast after my mom passed away. My sister and I both. We had to be, look after him. We didn't want to make life hard for my dad, so we certainly, became responsible very quickly after that.
Of course. And so you mentioned you cooked. Were you the one cooking, or was it more your sister doing that?
No, my sister and I both. She was 2 years younger than me. I started doing it first, and she did. And then we had an adopted grandfather that helped us. He wasn't our paternal grandfather, but he was a very close friend of my family's, and he was an older gentleman, and he lived with us until quite a few years. Even during when the housekeeper was living with us, he lived with us. He was like a grandfather to us, and because my grandfather died 2 years before my mother died, my grandfather who was living with us passed away in 1947, and then 2 years after that, my mother passed away. So that was really a difficult time for my dad and us. So my adopted grandfather, who was a very good friend of the family, he was a single person. He just moved in. He just looked after us, did the cooking, showed us how to do everything. He just took over everything to help us. So he lived with us for quite a few years until I think we were teenagers, 15 or 16. And then he sort of passed away too.
What was his name, if you mind?
Huh?
Do you mind telling his name?
His name was Jack, and his Indian name was Hazara, Hazara, and everybody called him Jack. His Canadian name was Jack. So he worked in the mills. He was a chef in the bunkhouses. In those early days of the sawmill, there was Indian bunkhouses, Japanese bunkhouses, and Chinese bunkhouses. So most of the people in those days were single. They didn't bring their families here. They worked in the mills and lived at the mill sites. So Jack, my adopted grandfather, he did a lot of the cooking in those places because he was very good at cooking. And so Then he worked in the mills as well. Then moved to the
And what mill was this?
the mills that my dad worked at in Port Alberni. He worked in mainland too. He worked at the Fraser Mills. You know, they worked. There was so many mills on the mainland during those years. Fraser Mills, other mills, all Dollarton Mills, the North Vancouver, right downtown Vancouver. There were countless sawmills. So there were jobs, plenty of jobs for labor type work. You know, piling lumber, pulling on the green chain, loading cars, loading ships, that kind of hard physical work. So my dad worked at Fraser Mills, I think, for a couple of years, and so did my grandfather.
Do you have like any stories of your father, grandfather's time working at the mills?
Well, very few. I mean, like, there wasn't much excitement to talk about. We were very young. I mean, when my grandfather passed away, I was only 6 years old. So I only had the luxury of being around him for 5 or 6 years. And, what do you learn when you're a kid like that? My sister was 3 and he passed away. And so, but they worked at the mill and they talked about, living conditions and that. And, you know, they enjoyed their life too. It wasn't all work. I mean, there was church function, there was all kinds of functions they would put on themselves, to keep themselves doing things when they weren't working, and played a lot of sports, always volleyball, soccer, that type of stuff they talk about. And they talk about the different mills and the people that they work for, and, that type of thing, opportunities, that that type of thing. And, and they were quite aggressive, I found. They wanted to better their life. They wanted to go into business, to do different things if they could. So they didn't spend all of their time. When they seen an opportunity, they would move on to another in the same area. Like my grandfather came here in 1907 in September, and he was about 17 years old and couldn't speak English, write English. And, how they got along was they would congregate at churches and mills, and the similar guys and groups were there. They help each other get a job. Then they live on the quarters at bunkhouse facilities that were provided by the mill owners. They would live there and eat there, and then there was usually they'd have a church there too, where they could, you know, get together and congregate, and then there was always sports going on. Every time I seen it, there was always a soccer field, or, they were doing all kinds of different things to keep themselves occupied. They would figure out things to do to keep themselves happy and working. And they didn't have their families here either. My grandmother passed away when my dad was born in India. And then my dad lived in India and my grandfather was here. So my grandfather's brother and his wife raised my dad until he was 15 in India. And then my grandfather sponsored him to come to Canada. So when my dad came to Canada, he was 15 years old in 1924, joined my grandfather here and joined him and lived in bunkhouses. And, they never owned their own home. They worked in mills, different mills, and they would sell wood, do little businesses wherever they could to survive. And they seemed quite happy. I mean, there wasn't any complaints that I heard of.
You mentioned they went into business, sort of thing. Like, did they own their own business, or?
Yeah. Like my grandfather got into logging business, small sawmill business, trucking. In those days, all the houses in BC were heated by wood. So a lot of guys would have a wood business. They would buy the wood from the sawmill and then deliver it to your home. All over Vancouver, they started with wood stove. And then later on, they went to sawdust. Then after that, they went to oil and then electric stove. Just over the years, I remember having a wood stove in our house when I was growing up. And that was in the 40s and the 50s. And I remember when we converted to a sawdust stove. And then after the soda stove came our oil stove. And then after that, electric stove. So, and there wasn't fridges around. We didn't have a fridge. I don't remember having a fridge for a long time when growing up. So, so those things evolved over a period of time after a while.
Do you have like a cold cellar then, that sort of thing?
Yeah, there would be a cold cellar for putting the butter in and all the stuff so it doesn't spoil.
Going back, growing up, you went to school, correct?
Yeah, I went to 8th Avenue Elementary School. I grew up in Port Alberni, and I attended 8th Avenue Elementary School from grade 1 to grade 6. And then when grade 6 was finished, I went to our Alberni District High School, and that started at grade 7 to 12. And then I graduated from PDHS, which is Alberni District High School, from grade 12. And so I went and did all my schooling, and all my friends, were, from my school and my neighborhood. And what we enjoyed most was every day we'd go out after school to play sports. It wasn't organized sports. The park was right in front of our house, so you play soccer, you play basketball, you play, all kinds of sports. So that's what we did most of the time. There was no TV. Not until I don't know, 55 or 60 years.
Right.
And then it was black and white. Some of the great memories growing up, though. And I grew up in Port Alberni. It was a forestry town. Port Alberni was a forestry town. They had a plywood plant, sawmill, the logging camp, that kind of stuff. And it was a very prosperous town. Everybody worked pretty well in the forest industry there. And I grew up, and that's why I liked the forest industry. I wanted to work in the forest industry and build myself up and do things and manage mills and all that. But my dream was to do that. So after I finished high school, grade 12, 1959, my dad got me a job at the Tassis sawmill in Port Alberni. Tassis company had a sawmill in Port Alberni, and they needed a carrier driver, a lumber carrier driver. So I was really lucky. Right after high school, I got a lumber carrier job. And that's a pretty important job. You go around picking up the loads on a lumber carrier. I don't know if you're familiar with the carrier, but it picks up the loads and delivers them to the yard where the forklift then piles up the lumber and piles and takes them down. And my job was pick them up from the sawmill green chain and deliver them to wherever they had to go for 5 years. So I did that for 3 years before I went on to university. And then in 1961, I enrolled at UBC, and I was 21 years old. And I stayed there for 2 years, but I wasn't, that tuned in to being an academic. Like a lot of the guys were graduating when I was just starting. So then BCIT opened up in 1966. So I joined BCIT, and I graduated from BCIT with a diploma of business administration. And then when I graduated from there, I got interviewed and I got a job up at Tassis. Tassis had a sawmill in Tassis on the west coast of Vancouver Island, huge sawmill. So that's where my sawmilling career started. I got an opportunity to move up and get training, and I started as an assistant production coordinator. That coordinates the production of the mill to the shipping and sales. Very important learning process for a person to start out with. So I did that job as production coordinator. And then I got transferred to the yard, running the yard and shipping, the physical part of moving lumber around, getting it ready for shipment and all that kind of stuff. And then I moved in and they put me into the planer mill as assistant foreman, and then assistant mill foreman. That 5-year term. After 5 years, I decided I wanted to move elsewhere and get more training in the sawmill. So I left that job and moved to Campbell River. And then Campbell River, I got a job with Raven Lumber as the shipping and sales coordinator, and did that job for about a year. Then I got a chance to joined Talon Timber, who was building a sawmill. So they hired me as their general manager to build and run the mill and all the phases that are involved in running a sawmill. So I really got a good education in sawmilling, production, and logs, and how to process them, how to market them. It was a good, I was very, got those opportunities to do that. So that was really good. So I learned the business. And then after 5 years in Campbell River, I got a chance to go back up to Passes as superintendent of the mill. And that's one of the largest mills on the coast. And that's the opportunity. So I went back up there. I got hired on as superintendent of the mill. And I did that for 3 years. And then I was promoted to mill manager. Then I became the mill manager for close to 5 years. And then I did that's after that I decided I wanted to own my own business. I was ready to own my own, saw lumber manufacturing and stuff like that. So in 1986, that was I moved to Nanaimo and started our business. So buying lumber, remanufacturing it, and I knew what to do, and I knew where to sell it, and so that's how I started.
Nice. Do you mind talking a bit about the culture of these sawmills and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I didn't find any difficulty. I blended in really nicely. I had this good, I don't know, way about me that people liked me, took a liking. And all these opportunities I got is I had to prove myself, and I proved myself to do those jobs where my senior person, whoever I was reporting to, was happy with me, and only then do they give you a chance to move into different jobs. I spent 2 years in Passes learning all of the jobs in the mill and under different supervisors. So to the point where they gave me these opportunities to learn the job because I could learn them quickly, and then I'd be teaching other people to do the job as a spare man because I could learn them quite quickly. So that gave me a good grounding and a background to manage mills, operate mills, and see the whole picture of running a mill, like from the manufacturing, from the log selection, right through to the marketing side. So that opportunity I got with the Tassis company, and I stayed with them until I started. I mean, the culture was really good. I mean, the sawmilling culture are working people, hardworking. They're not university graduates. They're maintenance welders, uh, mechanics. To fix the machinery, uh, graders, all kinds of people that are just normal, everyday people, just working people. And my dad was a working guy. My grandfather was a working guy. So I didn't have any problem mixing with the culture. I just knew what they were like, and my whole life was spent around them. So when I got a chance to go into the mill, I understood what the needs were, how to treat people, and how to respect people. That's an important part that you have to be able to do. Not everybody had that. I've worked under people that were, terrible supervisors, terrible managers, and they didn't care about anybody other than their own careers. So, and some of them did very well with that attitude, but that wasn't my way of doing
Yeah. You talked a bit about, but were all the sawmills around the Lower Mainland, they were did everyone know each other and were connected, or?
Yeah, well connected because Jenna, in those days and even up till lately, like if you're working in a in a sawmill on Vancouver Island, maybe it's an isolated place, you learn a trade and you better yourself by going to different cities. If you're in an isolated place and you learn your trade, what you want to do is you may move to Fraser Mills, or you may move to a better community. So, with so many sawmills around, people got a chance to move around as they increased their skills. Like Passes was an isolated community. So we had a turnover there of about, I think every year, 100%. But mostly, when journeyman mechanics and graders and sawmillers wanted to improve themselves, they would get a chance to go there, and then they would move to Nanaimo, Campbell River, Surrey, Vancouver, where mills were better located, better opportunities for schooling for their kids. So they moved around quite a bit. They would go to these isolated communities, work, but I enjoyed it. I didn't move. I liked Passes. I raised my kids there. I enjoyed the small community. You know everybody, It's just amazing. And so I really enjoyed the small community. So I didn't move around a lot, but a lot of people do. Like, I mean, and so now when, after I started my business, I would run into people, all kinds of people that work in different mills that I moved in or worked in.
Yeah.
So it was a good, and in those days, like in 1986, there were about 47,000 unionized workers working in the BC forest industry. And today there's 7,000. 140 to 150 mills have shut down in the last 25 years on the coast and the interior because of the shift of logs, location of logs, where the mills are located. It doesn't make any more sense to have those mills. And they built mills that are, they could cut more production with less people, with advances in machinery and equipment. So things have changed, and the forest industry has changed, and we have to change. And my business changes all the time. That's why it's still in business. Forest industry, as you know, if you read the papers and follow it, huge changes occur every year, and less people are working in it because the opportunities aren't there anymore. Um, the logs that were available 100 years ago aren't there now. When you grow trees, it takes 300 years for the trees to grow back. So with those mills that were in those heights, like there's no more Tassis Company in Tassis. There's no more Gold River pulp mill in Gold River. There's no more pulp mill in Campbell River. There's no more mill. You go up and down the island and on the mainland, the mill in Vancouver, now there's one mill in Vancouver. So things are changing. Up in the interior, our forest industry is losing sawmills because of the pine beetle. There's no more forest to cut. So it's getting smaller and smaller, the industry is. So the challenges are everybody needs lumber, everybody building houses out of wood, and so my business model is to cut wood to service different customers' needs in different parts of the world, and so I've been able to do that and keep ahead of the curve, and hopefully I continue doing that.
So are you still in charge of your business, or have you
Yeah, I come to work every day. It's a family business. I have two sons that work with me. They wanted a career in doing this. So one is 50 and one is 53. And they run the day-to-day stuff. Like, my job now is more about strategy, planning, how we can improve things and lend my experience to them in our everyday work. So I don't have to go out and search for logs. They do the main everyday work. I don't have to do that anymore. So I find myself in a very good position of lending my experience back into the business, helping it grow, and train my team. And we got a really good team. Oh,
sorry,
hey,
I'm supposed to say hi.
I thought somebody was behind me.
I saw that.
Nice to meet you there. So,
how are you doing this morning?
huh?
How are you this morning?
I'm doing fine. Yeah, just sitting here talking to Jenna and
Good.
giving you.
I got your signed form, so thanks for that.
No, thank you very much. So you scan anything you want for the thing, and it's fine with me. No problem.
I may be in touch today to get the names of your family that are in the picture I took.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And
I'll leave you to it. Thank you.
let me know. I thought somebody was standing behind me.
Yeah.
Anyway, no, it's been, I have no complaints. I got, my dad and grandfather came here. They worked hard in the industry. They never got a chance that I got, but what they did give me the chance to grow and do things that I wanted to do. And my children, the same thing. Like the grandchildren now have joined the business as well. One is 29 and the other is 22. So I feel blessed, as a matter of fact, to be able to run the business and have my sons and then now grandsons come into the business, and it's going to be a different business. We have to be able to be competitive. We have to know how to run the business differently than when I started. So every year it changes, and every business is like that. There's no such thing as something set up and it lasts forever. Nothing lasts forever. But we're going to stay in the sawmill business. There's always going to be a need for lumber. So we're going to try and stay competitive and figure out how we can continue offering lumber products to the world. Like 60% of our products go overseas and 40% are sold in North America, in Canada, and the US. That's how, and it changes. If the market slows down in the US, then the 60% go to 50%. The market here is better, it'll go up, but it'll fluctuate between 50-50 for our market share.
Mhm. Nice. Interesting. And did your dad help you with this business, or was he totally separate?
Passed away. He passed away when I was, so I was really happy because I got to be superintendent while he was alive. He passed away in 1979, and I moved back to Cassis in 78 as superintendent of the mill. And he was retired from the mill a year later, and then he passed away in 79, 2 years later. So he's been gone quite a few years now, at least 25 years.
Oh, okay.
My grandfather, he passed away in 49. But they all contributed something to me. My dad did. I learned things from him, and character, being honest, being helpful, all of those qualities that they gave me and I inherited from them, I carry them. And the treating people well, that was important. I remember my dad and grandfather helping everybody they could. There wasn't anybody that came to them that needed a job that they wouldn't help get a job. They didn't have a place to live, they'd live with us. It was always like that. Our house always had one or two people in the house that my dad was trying to help. Relatives would phone him and say, well, can you help my cousin or somebody get a job? They come here, live with us for a few weeks or a few months, get a job, then they move somewhere else. That was always going on in my life. So I, learned a lot of, character traits from them. Treat everybody equally. They taught me a lot.
What's the name of your company?
It's Sundher Timber Products. Sundher is our name, Sundher. So our company is named after Sundher Timber Products. And one of the most, great things that I'm proud of doing is opening up the India market. Like our company is a leader in providing our BC lumber into the India market. We did that about 20 years ago. I'd never been to India. I was born here. I went to India to attend a relative's wedding, and it took 2 weeks. And I noticed, wood being used all over the place, like wood windows, doors, furniture, all wood, but no Canadian wood, no BC wood. It was all hardwoods, and the main wood they use there is teak, which is very expensive. And they didn't build their houses out of wood, but they did their finishing out of wood. Finishing flooring, cabinet work and all that kind of stuff made out of wood. So when I came back to Canada, at that time I was a manager of the hemlock mill, just a year before I was going to go, and I started going to all the associations that I knew. Why don't we choose India to try and promote our wood products and develop a new market for our wood? Nobody's interested. So then I approached McMillan Bloedel and asked them if they would, support me. And they said, well, look, we don't want to put anybody on it of our team, but we'll give you an agency agreement. You do the legwork and you do the quarterbacking, and we'll support you. So that's how I started, with their help. And then I kept lobbying the government, kept lobbying the Lumber Association to look at it. And finally, in 2005, or no, 2010, Forced Investment Initiative, which is a crown corporation owned by the BC government, which goes all over the world promoting our lumber products. So they said, well, look, we're going to look at India. So give us your view. So I made my presentation to them, and they liked it. And then they hired a consultant, international consulting firm, like governments do, to get a study going. And they did a very comprehensive study on India to see if the market exists there for our wood, and it was positive. So then FII opened an office in India, and they hired people there. And now they got 11 people in 3 or 4 cities in India that promote our Canadian wood. So it helps us Canadian companies to get our wood put into that market. So we've got some very high profile projects that we put our wood into. And so I'm really proud of that, of our company doing that, being one of the leaders in promoting to sell our wood, because our traditional markets, Japan, US, Europe, are shrinking in our traditional markets. And so we need to find new markets. So we're working in India, we're working, opening up China, it's opened up quite a bit, Vietnam, and other South Asian countries, Dubai, the Middle East countries, the South American countries. We're trying to find new markets to replace because Japan used to be our #2 market after the US, and now they're in 3rd spot. And the Europe has been rebuilt after the Second World, so they don't need as much wood from us anymore. So our company is looking always at new opportunities to sell our wood, and that I'm proud of. That we're assisting ourselves.
What is the best use for the wood, kind of Canadian wood?
Well, the Canadian wood in North America, our biggest market for Canadian wood here is in the housing market. US is the biggest housing market we have, so it's our biggest market for our wood, #1. #2 now is China, and #3 is Japan, and then Europe. So those are the big markets, and they use it for housing, for furniture. That's what they use it for. For finished lumber, you go to a house, all the molding, stair parts, furniture, all out of wood. All over the world, that's what they do with it. And in Japan, they build their houses out of wood, which is a good thing. That's why their market is so good. They believe in wood constructed houses, but China doesn't. And neither does India, and neither does a lot of the parts of the world. They use brick and mortar, and then use the wood for finishing. India, the biggest market for wood in India is furniture. Everybody makes furniture out of wood, and all over the place. Most of our wood is used in furniture making and finishing for people, flooring, ceiling parts, all kinds of. You see all over the place every day. That's what wood is used for. And it's still #1 is US, #2 is China now, #3 is Japan, and #4 is Europe. And the others are new markets, but they're insignificant compared to those 4 markets. The US takes up probably over 60% of our lumber is sold in the US market. then the balance goes into the other parts. Where different types of lumber goes in, different sizes go in for different end users. So it's really quite interesting working with all that different stuff, and they change all the
Um, oh, what year was that where you went to India for the first time?
It was 1980, 83. 83 was the first time I visited India to a family wedding. And that's when I discovered there was opportunity there for selling our lumber. And for the last 25 years, I've been trying to get that market opened up. And now I've got the Canadian government, the BC government, and the trade associations interested in India. And all the major companies here now are selling wood into India, along with China, along with Vietnam and all those countries. So I'm really proud of that effort that we made to try and convince these people to look at these markets, especially.
And so then I'm assuming then you've been back and forth between India since then.
Yeah, we usually, because of COVID, we haven't gone for 2 years. The last year that we did was in 2019. But we normally go back every year, sometimes twice a year, to go to trade shows where we're promoting our wood. And the trade shows are sponsored by FII. So the majority of the money for those trade shows are spent by our government and trade, and we participate, all the companies participate, and they pay a portion of it for their booth in there. About $5,000 they contribute every year to go to a trade show. And then when we go to the trade shows, we usually go for 2 weeks. The trade shows for 3 days, we go and visit customers. We try and drum up business while we're there. So we've got a very good clientele now in India that buys from us regularly. We are also developed such a good reputation that Weyerhaeuser, one of the largest companies in the world, of forest companies, we're their agents for their SPF lumber, Southern Yellow Pine lumber, and SYP logs into the India market, Pakistan market, and the Middle East market. So that's a huge success for us to be representing Weyerhaeuser for their products in India, to have the confidence of that kind of company. And you can only get it by being proven that you're honest, due diligence is there, and you work hard. So they're quite pleased with the work we do there.
And how has COVID affected?
Surprisingly, COVID has increased our sales, increased our profit. The price of lumber now, since COVID took over, average 2x4 was selling for about $350 a thousand board feet. Now it's selling for $1,500 a thousand board feet. 4 times, 5 times the price it was before COVID. So all the major forest products companies, including us, are making record profits. Depending on the size of the company, our profits last year during COVID was higher than it's ever been before. This year again, it's going to be higher because of COVID.
Why has the price increased so much?
The people are staying home. They're doing more project work. And you go to Home Depot, you go to all these plywood prices have shot up. Before you could buy a half-inch sheet of plywood for $18. Now it's $49. The demand has outweighed the supply. That's what's happening. We cannot supply the market demand. So naturally the price goes up.
Yeah.
We're having a hard time supplying our customers. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That means we have no inventory unsold. So it's cut, it's gone. We're in the best position we've ever been. You can talk to any forest products company in the last 2 years since COVID started. The demand for wood has increased, the price has skyrocketed, and everyone's making money in the forest.
And like getting the lumber, it has like were like the people cutting down like the trees and stuff shut down ever, or were they do they continue working?
You mean the logging company?
Yeah.
No, they work, but they're seasonal. In the winter time, they have to, slow down. Our logging companies usually work about 6 months out of the year. In the summertime,
Okay.
because of fire season, they have to stop logging. In the winter time, because of snow, on the mountain, they have to come down to lower levels. So we have to stock up, say in March, April, when logging goes full bore, till maybe July or August when the fire season is huge, it stops. Then it starts back up for 3 or 4 months. But logging season is dispersed in 12 months according to winter conditions and fire season. So out of a 12-month period, logging companies log about 6 productive months. Sawmills run 12 months a year. We manufacture 12 months. So we have to stock up on enough logs to cut during the season when the loggers can't log, due to winter or fire season,
Okay.
depending on our volume of logs that we cut. We will be 3 months, 4 months ahead in inventory. So that costs money. You have to hold inventory, and that puts pressure on your bank.
Yeah. And for your like personal life, has there like how has COVID sort of affected?
On my personal life because of COVID?
Yeah.
Well, at my age, we don't do much traveling anyway, so I'm enjoying. My wife and I live on our own because my children are married. They have their own homes a couple of blocks away from us. We work together. They live in their own home, so we're very happy. And the COVID has not affected us that much, because the circle of friends are smaller, mostly in the family as you get older. A lot of my friends have passed away and whatnot. So, but we're very happy. We're not pressured by younger people are pressured more because they can't go to the restaurant, they can't go to the clubs, or they can't go here or holidays. As you get older, you change your habits. So like I don't like traveling that much anymore because it's hard. You go on a plane and wait at airports and get out the other end, go to hotels. I do it for business,
Yeah.
but not for pleasure. So no, it hasn't changed my way of life. I'm, okay with the way the kids are healthy and I'm healthy and the grandchildren are around all of them. So I feel blessed.
When did you meet your wife and get married?
Well, my wife, that's a strange story. She's born in India and I'm born here.
Mhm.
And when I was about, I don't know, I was at university at the time, I was about 22 or 23. My brother-in-law, who was married to my sister, was going back to India to visit his family. So one of his family members worked for my wife's father, who had a small business over there. They went to visit him and they started talking. My dad told him, "Hey, you're going to find a girl for Tom if you go back there." So he just, by whatever, I don't know, but um, he brought back the picture. We talked it over and got engaged. She's there. I'm here. She was 19 and I was about 22. I still had a couple of years to go before school was finished. So we wrote back and forth for a couple of years, got to know each other a little bit. And then she came to Canada in 1966. And I still had one more year to go or 2 years to go at BCIT. I graduated. So I got married and while I was still in school, and I got an apartment to live in while I was going to school, and we've been married 55 years now. And so things worked out okay, I think. I'm not disappointed, and sort of, I think the good Lord found her for me, not me. I have no answer for that, but it's sort of worked out okay.
So like you're religious, what religion do you practice?
Well, I grew up, when I was growing up in Port Alberni, I went to the Presbyterian Church and grew up, under a Christian type of atmosphere. Went to
Mhm.
Sunday school, went to, all this stuff and paid, and all my friends were Christians or Roman Catholics. So that's all I knew. Now, I didn't know much about our Sikh faith. Like, our faith is Sikh, like by heritage,
Yeah.
by background. My grandfather had a beard, a turban, so we are of the Sikh faith. So, like, I don't practice anything. I believe there's a God. I believe in God. I believe in good things. And I believe in Christianity and I believe in Sikhism, whatever I've learned about it. But I'm not, I don't practice it daily or anything like that. I just believe in God and do good things. And I know about Christianity. I know about, by going to school, you learn about all the different faiths, Zionism, Buddhism, Muslims, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't, I'm not a practicing Christian and I'm not a practicing Sikh. But I believe in all the stuff that they do, the good things and some of the bad things they do is not good either. But I believe there's one God, and I believe in God.
And did your or your like children grow up like what you're saying sort of?
Yeah, like they grew up in the same atmosphere. They know a little bit about Christianity, and they also know about our Sikh religion just by, like we talk about it, they can read about it, my grandchildren know about it, but they're not practicing, like they don't practice it. They don't go to church every Sunday or whatever. I don't either. When there's marriages, funerals, or functions, we go. Celebrations, we go, but not like people go every day to pray. We're not one of those.
You see like are there like specific celebrations that you guys celebrate though or
Yeah, well, like Indians have certain, like the Sakis and celebration days, we celebrate those. Here, we always celebrate Christmas and Easter. Those are our main celebrations growing up here, and we still celebrate that. We celebrate, all the stuff that we're basically, I'm a Canadian, born here, raised here. My best friends are, Canadian, born here with me. Still friends of mine when we went to school. My best friends at my wedding were the kids I went to school with. So, so that's, nothing has changed for me. India is my heritage, but Canada is my country, and this is where I belong.
when you're growing up in Alberni, were there like a lot of like Indian people there, or is it like more white town?
Well, yeah, when I was growing up in the 40s, there were only about 5 Indian families, that were families, like mother, children, everybody. Rest were single. They worked in, each mill had their own bunkhouse. There's about 6 mills in Port Alberni in those days. Each had their own bunkhouses where the workers lived, and the majority of people were single. The Chinese people, the Japanese people, the Indian people that came here in those days were single to get established. Some people stayed here, got established, brought their families, raised their families, like my dad did. Others made a bit of money, went back to India or wherever they came from. So in those days growing up, there were not a lot of Indian families around. So it's a mixture of all kinds of people. Where'd you go? Hello? 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 Hello, did you disappear for a while?
Yes, I did. Oh, that was my internet connection dropped. Sorry.
Okay, now that's okay. I started talking, all of a sudden, screen went blank.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Uh,
Ask the question.
yeah. Do you mind repeating or the question about like what like the town was like when you were growing up? Like,
On
yeah.
what?
Like yeah, like when you were going to the Paraboni, like if there's like it was like a multi-ethnic sort of town or
In Port Alberni?
yeah.
No, everything was quite mixed. Like there were people from all over the world, like from that we mixed with and worked with. You know, there were people from China, from Japan, from India, from Europe, all over the world. That we just mixed with everybody, and even in school, like it was like that. So I didn't have any issues with things like that. So I didn't find it.
Um, do you know your last name under like where that came from or the origins of it or the meaning
My
of it?
last name?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, all I know is it's a family last name. My grandfather had it in India, but when they came here, they didn't use their family name. Everybody came here, just used their first name and Singh as their last name. When I was growing up, I didn't know I had a family last name. I went by Singh. My dad went by Singh. My grandfather went by Singh as our last name, which is of the Sikh religion. And what it Singh signifies that you are belong to the Sikh religion. So my name is Tom. My Canadian name was given to me at birth, and then my Indian name is Bahadur. My grandfather gave me my Indian name, and Singh is my religious connotation of our name. Everybody that belongs to the Sikh religion has Singh behind it, and then the family last name. So Tom Bahadur Singh Sundher is my names on my birth certificate. How Sundher is a family name, inherited by our family, and everybody that was allocated within our family, it was a large family, all had Sundher as their last name. And if you look at India, we're from the Punjab, which is the northern part of India, and that's the entry point into India. And we're, our ancestors came from Persia, actually, and the Aryan nation. So we are of the Aryan mostly on the north, and then from the south of India, there are the Negroes that come from Africa and those nations with their darker color. So if you go to India, go to the south of India, the color of the people is lighter of the north. They're more Aryan, and go down south, they come from Africa and other those kind of countries who settled in the lower part of India. If you go to Mumbai, you go to Chennai, you go to that like India is like a triangle. So the north is up in the Punjab, and that's from Afghanistan and all that kind of stuff. If you look at the maps,
Mhm.
so the Punjab is mainly made up of people that came in and immigrated in the thousands of years ago from the Persian country.
Oh, interesting.
So that's a mixture of people coming in from different countries. So if you look at ancestry, ours is an Aryan nation. Like my features are the same as the Sweden. Then you got the Chinese and the Japanese, and then you got the Negroid. So there's those 3-4 classifications in the world, right? And so when people migrate, they mix or whatever they do. India is a conglomerate of people that have emigrated from all over different countries over the thousands of years of immigration.
Oh, do you mind saying, what was your grandfather's and father's first name?
My grandfather's first name was Ban Singh, Bhan, Ban Singh. And then my dad's name, first name was Laka, Lakha, Laka Singh. Those were the names that were popular. Tom was popular when I was growing
um, do you have any like heirlooms or stuff passed down to you?
Somewhat. Heirloom?
Heirlooms? Or yeah.
No, not very much. Like my grandfather didn't carry many belongings. He was single all his life here. His wife passed away when he came here at 17 or 18. He never remarried. And he was in a sawmill accident, I think in the 20s, and he lost his leg in a sawmill accident. And he had only one functioning leg. The other was a wooden leg that he carried with a cane, walked with a cane. So they didn't, they just, tried to make a better life for themselves.
And when so like you brought your wife up to Tassus with you?
Like what?
You brought your wife up to Tassus with you and when
Yeah.
after you got married?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's been wherever I went, she's been ever since, and kids too.
Was she more like a stay-at-home mom, or did she?
Yeah, stay-at-home mom. Yeah, I wanted. She looked after the family. She raised the kids. I was busy with my career, so when I'm doing a lot of traveling, when you're a supervisor in the mill, it's like a 7 days a week job. So together we made a life where she looked after the kids, raised the kids, did all the work belonging to the house, and my job was go out and do the work outside. So she never worked in a job, and even she speaks good English. She can do everything. She can talk to people, converse with people. But when we lived in Kansas, there was no place to work anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a one store and a hotel. So in the communities I lived, the kids were growing up, and it was more important that she, helped me raise the kids rather than go work.
Mhm.
I wanted it like that too. So did she.
What was your what's your wife's name?
What?
What's your wife's name?
Her first name was Sundher, Surinder. Surinder, pronounced Surinder,
Mhm.
and that's what her name is.
Thanks. What did like with you and your kids and your wife, what did you guys do for fun growing up? Like when they were growing up?
Well, the kids liked sports. Both Robbie and Dave played ice hockey. They played basketball. They played, the school, all the sports the school provided. The one game that they loved more than anything else was hockey, ice hockey. So I put them in ice hockey, and they played for ice hockey teams, and both of them. And then Dave, he really sorted towards tennis. I liked tennis when I was growing up. I played a lot of tennis. So he played tennis until he was about 20. Played on teams, won some championships and all that kind of stuff. Robbie concentrated on soccer and hockey, but hockey was number one for the whole family. So when their children were born, they were put in hockey. And my grandson went to become practically a professional hockey player. He could have gone into the NHL actually. Then he got injuries, and that caused a problem for him.
Yeah.
He even was a candidate for Team Canada when he was 17, 18 years old. And he got drafted by Philadelphia and then another team. And and then he played in Europe. So he ended his career at age 28, my grandson, and he joined our team. So he's 29 now. He's been with us 1 year, and he wants to, develop in the forest industry what we do and sort of take over the business someday. And my other grandson, same thing. He finished his hockey career and now joined us. He's 22. So he's with us now too. But hockey was number one in our family. We went to every one of the, I know every arena here on the mainland. We went to Quebec, went to Edmonton, all those tournaments all over the place. So hockey and sports was our number one thing for the whole family. I never missed one game. They belonged to the Burnaby Winter Club and the North Shore Winter Club growing up as youngsters. Played on their team till they grew out of it. So that was our passion as a family, sports, and doing things together, holidaying together and all that.
Do you have like extended family in around here, or
Extended family, how do you mean?
like cousins or?
Oh yeah, I have one sister only. So she has 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. They only live a couple of blocks from me. And they're also grown up now. They're all doing their own thing. I think one grandson works for Air Canada. The other one is in the lumber business. He does custom cutting like we do. And her daughter works at TELUS, I think, at one of the, and she's been working there. And she's married. She has 1 child. The 2 boys one boy has 3 girls, and the other one has a boy and a girl. So, and then my wife, she has 4 sisters here and 3 brothers, and they all have children, and they all live in the Surrey and Abbotsford area. So we get together. We got a big family, lots of family, and all of them have children. So it's pretty good.
And like you guys have like family gatherings, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Christmas time, special times, get together. Sometimes holiday together. Not everybody, but sometimes one with one family, sometimes with the other. But we all talk all the time, get together all the time. Because everybody's busy, doing different things.
Yeah. So no, like you're still working a bit, but do you have like I'm assuming not like full time, or are you full time still?
Full time, yeah. When I run my business, I want to be here all the time because there's a lot going on, financially, and we got to do planning, all kinds of stuff. So thankfully, I got good health, and I can keep working. I mean, it's unbelievable, but most people retire at 65. I'm 80, and I'm still going strong, and I have no intention of retiring. But I do different things than I did before. I'm not out looking for logs. I'm not out on a boat in the water, in the river. I'm not down to the sawmill every single day when we're doing cuts. That's their responsibility now. So they handle what they got to handle. So everybody got specific jobs to do, and they're responsible for what they do. So when I was working in a big company, everybody has a responsibility. So I hold every one of them responsible for what they have to be responsible for. But everybody got their job description. They got to do it. I just make sure they do it.
Right. Besides, do you do like what's your leisure stuff that you do now?
What do I like doing now?
Yeah, for leisure or fun.
In my leisure time?
Yeah.
Well, I like reading a lot. I read books. I got 4 books on the go all the time, different subjects. I like reading classical stuff. I like to read, like now I'm reading a book, The Lost Art of Scripture, that goes back 2,000 years. Reading another book, Amazon Unbound. I like biographies and history books and learning about everything. I've always done that. In school, I enjoyed English, writing, and I'm working on a book now, a family history book that I want to leave. And so that's a project I'm working on. And I like television, watching television, but I'm very selective on what I want to watch. I like history, biographies, and that kind of stuff. that makes sense. Not, I'm not, as you get older, your taste changes, your interest changes. So as time goes on, you change, and then I'm focused on making sure my grandchildren and children know about their history and not to waste their lives. They're all good. I mean, my granddaughter that was here worked with, but she's a graduate and Bachelor of Arts degree. The other ones have finished college and school, so they're all working good and being good Canadian citizens. That's important to me.
Yeah. Okay. Real- I guess. Well, has there been any like world events that like have like you found affected your family particularly?
Yeah, I think the thing that really uh, reading about was, well, the Second World War really affected all of us.
Mhm.
So the results of the Second World, how the World War, like reading history books of what happened, how it happened. The Second World War affected all of us,
Mhm.
and we were in Canada here at the time, and I was only 5 or 6 years old, and how people were all around us at that time had someone coming back from the war, some didn't come back from the war. And then the other thing that world event, which was important, is India's independence in 1947 from England, and it became just a Commonwealth country instead of so that was very important event for all of us here in Canada, all over the world. Indians all over the world were affected by that, and we were too. And when India became independent, became a country of our own, it was a point of pride to see how, and it's a democracy, and the two main languages in India, one is English. You go to India, everybody speaks English. Everybody, once they get to grade 3 or 4, have to take English. My wife, she came to Canada, she could speak English. She was born there, raised there. So English and Hindi are the main languages, and every state has different languages, but the main language is Hindi and English. So, so, so that was an important for all Indians worldwide that India was now an independent nation and a democracy, and English being the spoken language. So that was another world event that was important to us for those two events. And the other one was, the business aspects of Europe. At the end of the Second World War, Canada became prosperous because everybody needed our product. The United States, Europe, you know, they needed lumber. They were rebuilding. If you look at the pictures of the Second World War, all those cities in Europe were demolished. So they had to be rebuilt. But Canada prospered for the forest industry and its material. We have a lot of raw material here that goes all over the world. We had a population at that time, maybe 10 million in Canada. So our population wasn't great, but it was spread out in a big area, right from Newfoundland to the Pacific here in BC. And so it was interesting. Those world events affected Canada a lot.
Mhm.
Our way of life.
Do you speak multiple languages?
Huh?
Do you speak multiple languages?
I didn't hear you last week.
Do you speak other languages besides English?
Yeah. I can. English is my main language. But I can speak Punjabi. That's the language of the Punjab, where our family and heritage is from. I can't read it or write it, but I can speak it. I can carry on a conversation in Punjabi.
Do your kids speak it as well?
Hmm?
Do your kids speak
Yeah,
Punjabi?
the kids can speak it. The grandchildren can't speak it very good, but my boys can. They can carry on a conversation. But my children, my boys, and their wives didn't do a very good job of teaching their kids. Indian language. So that's not good.
Yeah.
That's a negative.
What happens? I think that's all the questions I have. Do you have anything that you wanted to add, or that I missed?
No, the thing that I, was talking to Candace about, from my grandfather to my dad and to me, I'm the first one that could read or write. And, so I feel it's my obligation to tell their story. And you guys are helping me do that. I also was contacted by the Sun paper, I think in 2005, of people that, came here in the early part of the century. And I wrote that story, and you have a copy of it, I think, with myself, my dad, my mom and sister and I in the picture with the story of their journey here to Canada and the opportunities it opened up for us. Like, I mean, growing up, I didn't feel any negative feelings to not belonging to, in our community, in our schools, in our workplace. So they gave me opportunity to go up to being a manager of a mill and then opening my business. I mean, those opportunities I enjoyed. I really appreciate, and I thank the upbringing that they gave me and the values they gave me that I'm hoping I can give my children and family of being honest and giving back. So those are I just feel blessed to grow up here in Canada, be a Canadian, and it's thanks to them that they wanted a better life. When I look at where they came from, it wasn't very many opportunities for them in those days. And I'm talking back in the 1900s in India, there was not much that these guys could prosper there. There was no chance for. That's why at 17, I don't know how he figured out I should come to Canada, or he should come to Canada at 17 years old, not knowing where he's coming. And when he came here, there was race riots going on against Japanese, Chinese, and Sikhs.
Yeah.
They didn't want you here.
Yeah.
So they went through a lot. And citizenship wasn't granted to the Indian community until 1947. And India gained its independence. That's when they allowed Indians to become Canadians.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that long ago.
Do you know then? Because you mentioned your grandfather, he was able to bring your father over. Was there difficulties with that? You know?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know how they passed. I mean, they had no qualifications to come. Like, for my grandfather to come here, first he had to go from his village to Calcutta. From Calcutta, they had to go to Hong Kong to go through immigration, fill in the papers, or to come. I don't know how they did it. I mean, he had no qualifications other than he worked. They were looking for laborers in those days, I guess. Same as my dad, he had no special qualifications to come. So in those early days, all those people that came they came because the country needed workers, laborers. They didn't want, they're building railroads. Like you're talking, Canada was born as a dominion in 1867. Okay, 67. So that's only 35 years after the Dominion of Canada was formed that my grandfather came in 1907. So they were Canada was looking for workers. They needed workers, and they didn't have enough population. I think the population of Canada was only 5 or 6 million in those days. They needed workers. They didn't want citizens. They wanted them to build the railroad. The Chinese worked on the railroads. These guys worked in the sawmill industry, which was labor intensive. Canada needed workers, but they didn't want them to be citizens here.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted them to work and then go back. And they didn't want them to bring their families either and settle here. all they wanted was workers. So my grandfather and dad and thousands of others that came during those days were illiterate. All they came here worked, and they worked the labor job. Nobody gave them a chance to be foremen, supervisors, or machine operators. That was reserved for the white majority. These guys' job was labor, just pull the lumber. I remember some of them never even went inside the mill. They worked their whole life out there on the machine. Thankfully, my grandfather and my dad were much more. My dad could operate all kinds of equipment, or mobile equipment. He was really sharp. My grandfather was motivated to own his own. They were both very motivated to do things. They weren't satisfied just working for somebody. And they were always doing something other than working. You know, they would start a business, or they would get a contract, or they would, you know, set up a little sawmill. You know, sawmills in those days weren't like this. I mean, they were tie mills, like little mills. You know, 2, 3 guys working, labor. You know, and like that. Not a big factory. You just sometimes right out in the open, right in the bush. You know, where the trees are, they would just cut there. And there were no chippers or anything, sawdust and everything just lay in the field wherever they were. So they were very motivated, ambitious to do good things. And they worked in all the different mills. They worked at Fraser Mills. Fraser Mills had bunk houses for everybody to live there. They also had a church there. People could congregate and pray and celebrate and get together, you know, on weekends and just you know, socialize.
Nice.
So it's quite a. More I learn about it, I'm writing it down, and you guys have given me a chance, and others have given me a chance to tell us about the early history of our, you know, our fathers and grandfathers in India. And they didn't write down very much. I mean, they just lived their life. And my dad, he never remarried either. He didn't remarry because he thought that if he married, then we wouldn't have the same, you know, he had other children. And his argument was that nobody's going to look after my kids as well as I will. So if I get married again or have other children, then that wife is not going to be really like a mother to my children. That's why he didn't marry. So, you know, they had their, you know, convictions and moral values and standards that they live by, and passed them on to me and my sister. And you know, like a lot of people complain all the time, but we never complain. I mean, why complain? Just do what you got to do. You know, no matter what. I mean, in business, for me, hasn't been easy either. I lost a lot of money. At one point, had to declare bankruptcy and start again. The business didn't go for me just like that. When I finished my career working for the big company, I had about 1 year savings. The kids were in grade 11 and 12. So I had a house in Tassos, had a house in Nanaimo, and I had to sell the Tassos house at a loss because I couldn't make the payments of the taxes. So I lost my initial investment. I sold it at less than cost. In Nanaimo, when I moved there, started my business, I couldn't keep up with the cost of the house. So I had to sell it, and it was a tremendous $30,000 I put down. That was lost. Then I moved to Vancouver and in a rented house. Then after a few years, got a house, and then I had to sell that house again because the business went down again. Then I had to declare bankruptcy, start all over again. And so starting the business has not been easy. And it had its ups and downs where I ended up losing everything. And one person asked me, said, "How did you ever survive that?" I said, "Well, my family stuck with me. My wife stuck with me, and my kids stuck with me. We worked together as a team." And I said to myself, well, I know more than I did when I was 20. I have more connections, I have more knowledge. So why can't I, just keep at it?
Mhm.
So that's what I've been doing for 30 years, but it hasn't been a straight go like that. It's been a struggle. But it makes you stronger. It makes you, you know, like, more alert, more thinking, like nothing is taken for granted no matter what. Tomorrow my business could disappear. I mean,
Mhm.
business is at risk all the time. I just read the paper today, Katera just went bankrupt. And they invested $25 billion into that business and it's done for toast. Mills have shut down, Woodwards have shut down, Sears have shut down. All the big companies that I knew of, Doman's disappeared, that I've seen in my lifetime. So nothing is a given. Like today we could be good, tomorrow we could be without anything.
Yeah.
Nothing is, you can't take anything for granted, and you just have to, have confidence in yourself. And don't complain if things go wrong. There's no point complaining. Just pick up pieces and carry on.
Mhm. Yeah. Good place to end it if you have.
Hmm?
I think yeah, that's a good place to end it if you said everything you want to say.
Yeah, I think so. I appreciate the interview and I appreciate your question.